I'd like to call this meeting of the Lambertville Unified School District Facilities Committee to order at 6:30. Gentle reminder, if you've got your cell phone, if you could silence or turn it off, we would appreciate it. Roll call, please.
David Pombo,
Here.
Colin Clements,
Here.
Jimmy Legrand,
Here.
Thorsten Harrison,
Here.
Caroline Davila, Lisa Boulay.
Here.
Thank you. Receiving of public comments. I'm not sure if you ladies wanted to speak or just listen. Is that,
It is on here.
okay,
It's V. It's B. We'll be there pretty quickly.
okay. You can wait until we get there if you don't mind. Thank you. Facilities use update, facility use minutes. Staff report?
Second page of your document, you'll find the minutes from our previous meeting. If there's any suggested changes or corrections?
None from me.
To be in order. Item B, finance report. Staff report?
Page 4 of your handout, or of your document. Our beginning balance was $172,928.76 for facilities use fees gathered. There were some expenses, but we also received revenue. The grand total of balance to date is $214,873 as of right now in our coffers for facility use fees.
Any questions or comments on the facilities use fees balances?
I wasn't sure when I looked at it, but the encumbrance is a new column.
And I was going to point that out because obviously that's how we noticed it. Wait a minute, that's not their true balance because we have projects that the board has now approved
That's what
that haven't finished. So that is good job. That's a new column. I thought it was important that you did think that money was still available. So I
No,
had
that's-
Carol add a column.
That's right. I figured it
Very
was
good.
money that we were obligated to spend that we hadn't yet spent. I just wanted to make sure. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvina.
Any other questions or comments on the balances? Facilities usage reports from December 13th through January 30th. Staff report?
So on page 5, it starts the facility usage. Altamont is the first school. You can see the multipurpose room use between tier 2A, 2B, and 3, and then classroom use. You can also, on page 6, see the Bethany use, 30 individual uses, 18 and 9, tier 1, tier 2A, and tier 2B. You can see how the bar chart works. And then below that, Lambertville's use, the multipurpose room and classroom. On page 7, we have the high school facility use. As always, we have far more rooms used at the high school. But once again, the small gym, learning commons are, and classrooms are used the most. And then below the high school is the Cuesta facilities use, the multipurpose room, tier 1, 2A, and 3 uses. And then finally, the last page is Wickland. You can see the soccer field use and the multipurpose room use, tier 1A and 2A users.
So if it says 12 in a blue bar, that's just 12 hours?
I believe that's users.
Oh, users, got it.
Users.
Okay, not ours. Okay, got it.
The NPR seems, at the high school, seems like it's in use a lot, but I'm guessing from these numbers that the usage in that facility has gone way down since we opened the theater and the learning commons and
There are more opportunities. Yep.
I think the NPR at the high school has become kind of a go-to room if the first choice is not available. Any other questions or comments about the usage reports? Thank you. Item D, denied applications. Staff report?
On page 9, you can see the denied applications, the group, the reason, and the accommodation that we made as an organization. As always, if we can make accommodation, we do. If we can't, often the event is canceled.
That's me.
That's,
Director of Maintenance and Operations.
it was, that request was denied at my direction.
I'll learn more about that very soon, I'm sure.
If you'd like me to explain it, I can.
Go ahead.
I won't use any group names, but a group wanted to use a classroom at one of our schools, and in the request, there was a violation of CIF bylaw, and I couldn't knowingly approve a violation of CIF bylaws in our facilities.
California Interscholastic Federation, which is, they oversee high school sports.
They're the governing body of high school sports. So if we violate any rules, they're the ones that punish. They're also the ones that sponsor all league and sponsor playoff events, things like that.
They would be the entity that you hear people getting in trouble for when they play an ineligible player or things like that.
I do have a question about denied or rejected applications in general. Actually, it's not denied or rejected. And I'll preface my comment or question with, the overarching phrase that, sometimes people hear it from a friend who hear it from a friend who heard it from somebody else who knew a cousin of, right? And
The infamous telephone game.
but as a board member, things percolate up to me, and one comment was made that I said I will, I reject it out of hand. I don't think it's happening. But the comment was made that people submit an application that district, and I'm, like a district organization, call it track or something, right? Submits an application to reserve a room or a facility, and they get it. And then a fee organization wants to rent it, and they get booted. And I'm like, that is 180-degree opposite of, and I'm like, is anybody in the organization, in the district, aware of situations like that have happened? Because I'm like, I just basically told the person, unless you can give me like an actual circumstance, I can just tell you that that's not, that's not happening, because we serve the students first. And as a matter of fact, sometimes we reject paying people because it's the reverse is true, that we have to look at them and go, gee, we got to figure something else out, because this organization, this school sport organization, club, activity needs it. And, so I did, tell the person, I don't believe it. Until you give me some facts and circumstances, I can tell you I don't believe it. But does that ring a bell? Has that happened recently, even by accident?
I'm not aware of any. You?
You're saying, I just understand that we denied a school group because there was a paying group that wanted to use it? Is that,
No, the actual claim was the school group had the facility and were told, no, you got to do something else, because a paid, and I'm just like, that doesn't even, that doesn't even sound like something we would do.
no, it's the other way around usually. I mean, sometimes we have to pay groups that already have the room reserved, and then something comes up with the school, and we have to end up telling the paid group that they can't use it because the school needs it. I don't, the opposite, I don't know of any example.
I don't know of an example, but I know that we had to add to the handbook rules about particular school events that could happen and bump a paying person.
Right.
So it is possible, maybe it didn't qualify under one of the rules that was established in the handbook.
But that's 180-degree opposite of
Right.
what I'm referring to.
I don't
No.
know any instances of what you're just.
And I don't know of any particular instances. I do believe that there's the possibility that someone could go to, say, the high school and talk to the principal or AD or somebody else there and say, we want to start a half an hour early. Can the basketball team, cut practice short? And then there's kind of a negotiation that might happen, but I don't know of any specific instances where the basketball team, for instance, has been told, get off the court because an outside agency is coming in and they trump you, which,
I didn't.
as
think
you
so.
said,
It sounded so contrary to the philosophy that we have that I just didn't believe it and had to ask. So
If the individual has specific names, or I could investigate, no problem, if it's brought forward, because that's not the way we should be operating.
and that's,
to date, no specific instances have surfaced. Well, let me ask one question though. Like, let's say an organization has reserved the multipurpose room, and which is a big room for like a meeting that's going to be 8 or 10 people, right? Would we potentially move them to a classroom if somebody wants to use the multipurpose room, like say for basketball? Might we do that?
I think there are instances where we just become good neighbors and we talk about the use and make an agreement. I'm not privy to anything like that, but that would make sense to me. If you're only going to have 10 or 12 people in there, let's move you into a classroom and let 40 people play basketball or whatever the case may be.
Even if they had reserved and been approved for the multipurpose room in question.
Yeah, I don't know that we actually look at trying to balance. I think usually it would be the end user. Hey, I'm using this and you're using that. Can we make a deal? And switch it up.
Okay.
But we don't look for it.
Okay.
So
and the way the system is set up, if the basketball team was the school team, it wouldn't matter how many people were, and they needed it. It wouldn't matter how many people were on the other side of the
Right.
situation.
I've probably taken up enough time, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Further discussion? Reimbursement to E, reimbursement to organizations. Staff report?
page 10, we had 3 organizations that received security deposits back.
The, number 3 is that's less than what they paid, I'm assuming, since it says returning security deposit. Was there some fee taken out of that, or?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I can check.
Maybe something was damaged and they paid for the damage.
Or
and that
cleaning,
was
maybe, I don't know.
Extra
I can
cleaning or
check.
something? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, go over on time,
Oh, so then,
so they get paid just a little bit more.
all right. Thank you. Moving on to 5, information and discussion items.
Can we add F, please?
Yes.
Update on the baseball field? Thank you. So Jen will put up some pictures here of the baseball field. I talked to Mr. Pombo before the meeting. One of the things that I think staff has failed to do is update this group. When you approve funds spent to upgrade facilities and do different things around the district, staff hasn't always brought that back, at least while I've been here. So that's a practice that I want to start doing so that you get update on what we've done and progress that we've made. So one of the things that I brought tonight is the baseball field. Remember, the upgrade was approved by this group, went to board, and Delta Bluegrass redid much of the baseball field. This is a picture of the, Jimmy, why don't you go ahead? You spent the most time on this.
This is the infield looking from first base out onto the infield. And again, first base looking down towards home plate. The infield was put in with a hybrid Bermuda grass. Something, when we get it mowed down, I'm taking it down slowly because it's new. But when we get it down to a point, it'll be similar to what you see on a putting green on a golf course. So about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch.
You guys are going to do the thing where you see the cross diamond patterns on the Major League Baseball field?
So you see the lines on there. That was my second mow. This is second mow here, so my lines are pretty straight, but there's a couple of crooked ones there.
I wasn't
I'm
going to comment on
practicing
that.
so I could get Thor's image right in front of the pitcher's mound.
That's it.
You need a bigger space.
What are you trying to say?
I just wanted to make sure that you notice the lips where the grass meets the dirt. They're low and cut tight. The entire infield and 30 feet out from the dirt was redone with the monies that you approved. The baseball field looks really good. It's immaculate. So those players should be very appreciative of what they get to play on. I've seen a lot of the fields. Look at that. A lot of the fields at other high schools that I've worked at and visited. This one is the best I've seen so far.
So the pitcher's mound was redone, the batter's box was redone, the hybrid Bermuda on the infield, all the skirts, the aprons on the side of first base, third base, and like Thor said, 30 feet out into the outfield is just your regular fescue type grass. So it's quite a bit of. They hauled out about 50 yards of material and brought in fresh infield dirt and leveled and re-leveled, regraded everything. So it's all redone. Turned out really nice.
I know it wasn't, well, it may have been part of this, but it wasn't resodded. But in the outfield, I know there were some cracks or burrows or something.
If you go to the picture I'm looking out into right field, remember which one that one was? It was right behind second base, right in right center field. The one with the third one, that one. So this is where the second baseman will play. It's directly out towards, you see the scoreboard in the background. It's directly in that area right there. That's where the cracks were. It's all been fixed.
I would, speaking of appreciating it, I would love to hear from the coaches, single coaches, to hear their thoughts and all that.
You mean you want them to come and publicly thank the committee?
No. It's just I would love to hear from them. Yeah, this is great. That would be great. They don't have to say thank you.
Well, we had some members of the public that had some concerns. We had a player come and speak to us very eloquently.
I know.
And so
So I'd love to hear the other side of that coin.
okay. I'll see if I can make that happen.
Being on the receiving end of that.
Thank you for letting me show those.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on the upgraded baseball field? Now we shall move on to item 5, information and discussion items. Item A, AR 1330 process. Staff report?
So I believe you have a tab where the handouts start. I think they're in order of our items on the agenda. At the top of one of the documents, it says use of LUSD school facilities, and in parentheses, I have alcohol. At not the last board meeting, but the previous, before that, the one in January, I was tasked with coming up with a process from the board president and trustees. I was given some information and some direction at that meeting. So this is my first draft or look at the information I was given and kind of creating a process. This, so let me just go through this and I'll comment as we go, if that's okay with you guys. Okay. So use process. The facility's use request is placed in civic permits to hold the date and location during the approval process. So my thought process was if somebody wants to have an event that has alcohol related, they're going to want to schedule it far in advance and get it booked so nobody else takes it. So it's booked and in civic permits, but it's on hold, right? Next, the request from the community group is brought to the facilities use committee with the following: name of the organization, organization's rental tier, description of the event, date of the event, facility requested, number of participants, and an affirmation. I believe they need to affirm to us publicly that they're going to have security at a 50-to-1 ratio if they're going to be serving alcohol at any sort of event.
And just to, as an aside, 50-to-1 is our minimum that you're proposing, correct?
This is what
Because
yes.
the, when they go to the sheriff, in this case, it'll be the sheriff and not city police, they will be instructed from law enforcement side a minimum security as well, which may be more or less than this one, but this will be our minimum. And if they say, if the police say, well, 100-to-1 is fine, that doesn't matter. We are saying 50-to-1. If the police say 25-to-1, well, then it's 25-to-1, not 50-to-1.
Yeah, yes, and I put this in here because I know all the discussions that we've had over the last 18 months on this, and I think at some point we discussed a ratio, and I think we said 50-to-1, so that's why I put it in. So.
At what point do they furnish us with their license?
That would be once we go through this process and at the very last line that goes into civic permits, and that would be a require of the civic permit process. They'd have to have all their paperwork and evidence once it's finalized in civic permits.
Do they have, is a security plan part of that process? You know, I know you've probably gone through that.
Well, the part of the process is that CHP, or not CHP, sheriff will, on behalf of the Alcohol Beverage Control Board, set parameters for security and that stuff. So that has to be in place with the sheriff before they'll issue the permit. So it should work hand in hand with our process, but.
I'll continue. The next bullet, Facilities Use Committee will review the request, ensuring all criterion are met. If the requested facility is available on the requested date, the associate superintendent will affirm with the school site that there are no student activities on the campus, on the school campus during the requested event date and time. I inserted myself into this because it's a new process, and you know, if going forward this process continues and we have a regularity to it, then I think I can relieve my name from this, you know, if it becomes a process. But in the short term, I wanted to make sure I was involved so that things were done, you know, precisely, and I could communicate with all committee members, board members, et cetera, what's going on.
It might not be a bad idea to insert or designee after associate superintendent, so that when we get to that point
Sure.
in the process.
You bet. The next bullet, if there is a student event or events on the requested campus during the requested day and hours, the requesting group will be notified the facility is unavailable. The associate superintendent or designee will bring the vetted request to the full board at the next scheduled board meeting. Upon approval, denial of the use of the requested facility, the associate superintendent will communicate the board decision to the requesting group. If approved, the requesting group's event will be approved in the civic permit system, and that's where we would check all of their paperwork and make sure they had everything that they needed to do the event. The thing that I have not placed on this is, which was a discussion item at the board, was what facilities, what schools, if any, PDC or anything like that. I did not include any of that because I think that was what we were tasked with from the board. I think we were tasked with figuring that out. So I did not include that in this until we had a discussion about it.
I don't recall if it's been addressed or not, but we should probably talk to legal and see if there are higher insurance requirements for this sort of event because I know we have insurance requirements in the handbook for rental of the facilities and that sort of thing. And we should make sure that what is currently required in the handbook and civic permits is adequate coverage for this sort of event.
Yeah, I believe in the facilities handbook, we have high-risk events, and it's a $2 million liability. Alvina, you want to double-check me? $2 million liability for high-risk events is in our, but I can double-check that with legal, for sure.
So in the bullet where it says facilities use committee will review the request ensuring all criterion are met, where can a requester find that criterion?
It's the list above, the list of items that we're asking
okay.
for them to bring to us, informational items.
Got it, okay.
And then, obviously, on the permit, the civic permit, there's the standard questions on there that they would have to answer as well, which we would have access to because they've put it in at the beginning.
Okay.
I have two questions. Number one, when the request is made, let's pretend for a moment that there are no other requests for the school in question. I'll say the high school for argument's sake. So they put it in. Does that mean that until the district and the board has adjudicated on whether or not to accept, that there's a moratorium on any events at the school going into civic permits? Or how do we intend to handle that?
The reason I put that there is in talking with Jimmy and talking with other folks about this whole process, one of the things that we realized is if a group's going to have an event, they're going to want to reserve it because it may take a month and a half to get it through this group and the board with board discussion. And so, that's a lot of days. So we thought that it should be reserved first. But your point is a valid point. If a school group wants to use it, they get bumped. So that therein lies a problem.
Because we do have multiple facilities on each site. And I just looked up extreme risk is actually 5 million.
Oh, is it 5
if we end up classifying it as an extreme hazardous risk.
Anyway, that would probably be something that we would seek guidance from legal or from our insurer to.
Well, and I know we've touched on this, and obviously they've always discouraged these, and stating that the user who is providing alcohol have their own liability insurance as well on top of it.
So my fear in this, and I think everybody knows that I'm supportive of the concept. My fear in this is that it's kind of the Gordian knot. Because we have to take measures, or we have to ensure that there aren't regardless of the potential wording of the law, the actual wording of the law, when students are not present. And So if we say there can be no other activity, no other meetings, because it's going to be an evening meeting or a weekend meeting, right? So it's obviously not when school's in session, that's obvious. But if we say there can be no other functions on campus, then, well, right, it would be no other student functions. But we would have to take measures to ensure that it stays that way, right?
Yeah.
And that means if there are other activities on campus, we would have to determine whether students are going to be there, right? Because even if it's a parent, like the way I interpret it, even if it's a parent meeting, if parents are going to bring their kids and their kids are students, then guess what? It's a student meeting, even if that's not the focus of that meeting. And I don't think here's my problem is, I don't think that's reasonable, but I don't think the law is reasonable. The law holds us to this verbiage. And so I think we're left with, if we're going to be fair, and they go through all the, they go to Ben, because I'm assuming it's high school for a moment. They go to Ben, there's no other activities. Ben is supportive of the idea, and we'll use crab feed for an example, right? And they say, okay, this day, there's nothing scheduled for this day, and it's 6 months in advance, and we're gonna meet all the criterion, right? Then I think that in order to be fair to that organization, we have to say, okay, there's a moratorium on other events, and I think that might be kind of difficult to enforce.
Well, I think that it's going to be, as you've put it before, a very difficult needle to thread because, say at the high school, crab feed, they crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's and everything's in order, and they say we want to have a crab feed on February 17th. Okay, it's all good. Basketball team makes the playoffs. That day, that night is a playoff game.
And their home team, because their seed is the win.
They're seeded 1.
Yeah.
Then in that instance, the group is going to have to be going in with the understanding that you could be bumped. So that is a risk that
That risk is somewhat mitigated if it's not the high school.
yeah.
That's
but-
what I was thinking, because for the K through 8 schools, what is, right, how often are the schools used on a weekend for student activities? I know, Wickland was last week, but that was an exception. It's not that common, is it?
Well, let me add another wrinkle to your knot.
Another string in the Gordian knot.
Sorry, but the superintendent and I were discussing this the other day, and then all of a sudden it hit me. I believe there's a community master plan that we have an agreement that our open spaces are used by the community as park, and there could be kids and people on campus at any time, and if they're living in our community, they're probably our students. So how do you mitigate that? Do you lock the gates? And do you see what I'm saying?
To take that even further, it doesn't matter if they're our students or not. If they're students,
That's a good point.
Well,
I didn't think of that.
But I think, that whole word student, there's a lot of interpretation. Adults can be students. So just the law in general can be interpreted in so many different ways, just that one word alone. And if we follow the law that students can't be present, kids under 4 years old could be present because they're not students. So, there's a lot of interpretation.
well,
Can I just say the legislators in Sacramento really didn't do a good job with this law.
I really think that the likelihood of implementing this before we have a facility that's not a school facility is probably not very high, because I think it's too risky. And even, I was talking about the crab feed at the sports boosters, and they said, wait a minute, if students can't be there, we can't have kids bussing tables and and it's like, you're right, you can't.
Right. That is very clear.
And it has to be, no, you can't bring your 17-year-old to eat crab because he's a student. So I don't know, but I feel like we have to do our due diligence, put something together that both sees it from the user side and also protects the district and tries our best to follow the law as it's written, so.
So can I have a point of clarification, because we were talking about if an event was at a high school, it was a hypothetical event, we'd have to make sure that no other school event was happening at that time. But we didn't address kids from the community being on the fields or anything. But when we talked about it being at one of the K through 8 schools, then we were talking about kids using the parks. So is our vision that we can't hold, that we're going to lock down the school? Okay, sorry. Is our vision that we can't have alcohol on campus if there's another school event with students? Or is it that we can't have kids playing on the playgrounds? Or is it both? I think that's where I'm a little confused.
No students present is what the,
And unfortunately, the law does not expand on that and give a definition of student, because when it first came to the board, I'm trying to remember what the hair that we were trying to split was, other than generally.
it said generally present, and we wanted a definition of what generally present meant.
Okay.
And then trustee Belzarini had communicated with CSBA, and they had indicated to him that they were rewriting it because it was unclear.
Okay.
The policy, I didn't say what, that the policy was unclear.
So if we were having a crab feed in Wickland multipurpose room, and it was with alcohol, and there was a kid playing in the back on a soccer field, I would not consider that generally present.
Well, but they took the generally out of when they rewrote the.
Gone.
Now it just says when no students are present, period.
But I would still think if someone is way out on a field outside, and I'm in a multipurpose room having an event, I wouldn't consider them present.
That was actually my next comment, which is, was, I think the function of this is to provide a recommendation, and we decide what we think, right, is, and the reality is, if we cannot, if the playground is a free space and we cannot limit access to the parkish areas that are school property, then and we define it that it's the four corners of the school property, then that's the needle that we can't thread. And so if we say, look, it's the multipurpose room, and the multipurpose room and the access to the multipurpose room, and the organization has to take measures, and maybe that's additional security, maybe that's adult supervision to ensure that students don't get any closer than that, so that we kind of cordon it off. I'm not saying that if we decide that, the board will agree as a group, but that is our function here, is to kind of say, okay, what do we think that means?
Are we giving our opinion right now?
Yeah,
I think that if you, so not Altamont, but let's say Cuesta, is somebody, just on the other side of the fence along Esplanade and the fields back there, are they present if the quad is locked? The quad area is locked. You have your event in a multi-purpose room. There's really not, you have security. Would you consider them present if the law's not clear about it and we use common sense? I wouldn't consider that present.
I wouldn't, in fact, I would wonder if they even knew what was happening.
And their access would be limited.
Right.
Well,
I agree.
Unfortunately, the state has given us a vague law, and the way that those questions are going to be answered is if some group is taken to task legally and the state or whoever says, those kids weren't supposed to be there, and you let them be there, and then it will end up in a court somewhere with lawyers arguing, were those kids in the playground or out in the field present? Or was that outside the parameters of what you consider present to this event? And that's unfortunate, but that's probably where it's going to end up, is in a courtroom somewhere with one set of lawyers arguing one side and another set arguing the other side. And it's unfortunate, but you know, when they so often give laws, either state or federal laws, that have too many gray areas, which I think this does, then it makes it very difficult to divine what the intent was. And in fact, when CSBA wrote the initial board policy, they didn't, you know, them with all their lawyers and all their resources didn't get what most people felt was the true spirit of the law in their board policy recommendation. So I don't know. I think the only thing we can do is try to figure out these things, and then when a group comes, and somebody will come eventually and say, we want to do this, and we can make sure they have all these things, and then it will go before the board, the full board, and the board will decide, yes, we want to give this one a go, or we don't think that we can adequately ensure that the law is being followed.
I'd hate to give some group false hope that they have a chance to get it through. Any group, I mean, it sounds like the bar set so high. that
Yeah,
It
and
almost makes it seem like, why bother having a policy?
That's where I was. And President Balzerini brought this up in not this past board meeting, but the previous board meeting. And three of us stated our understanding of what transpired. And President Balzerini had one opinion, Trustee Pombo had another opinion, and I had yet a third opinion. I did feel that way. That was how I felt, was that this Gordian, this needle was unthreadable the way it was written and could be interpreted. And so why try to create a policy or a procedure that's going to support the impossible situation?
I'm not a proponent of presenting an impossible situation. I tend to think that I would not consider a student present if they're not in the general vicinity of where an event is taking place, especially if there were some access controls. So I'm not quite there, you know, in an impossible situation. But at the end of the road, if the policy is so convoluted or so difficult, that realistically is a community a fundraising organization going to be able to jump through all these hoops?
yeah, and
Can I add something?
certainly.
There is a facility that's opening that I think would solve much of the problem. The PDC is going to be fenced in. It's going to be separated from the school. It's going to have separate parking. It's going to have separate access and all those things. I mean, that,
Right.
And refresh my memory, what is the timeline for actual opening? Because I get focused on starting.
About a year out.
yeah, I think it's a year to 18 months, because I think that's going in before Cordis. Is that correct?
I think it'll be the first part of that project, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Like the community to maybe focus in on that instead of how do we get the high school, how do we get our crowd feed at the high school? I think that the expectation maybe in the community is looking at the current facilities and maybe not so much communication to the community that we have another facility down the road that could be helpful. And I get we're doing this in anticipation of that maybe.
well, I think that was a part of the direction that was given to me by the board at the January meeting, was because that was also a part of the discussion of what, how, when, you know, and when I say what, I mean what facilities, how do we make it happen, when, et cetera. I think that's what I was asked to try to come forward with a process. So if that's something that we want to suggest to the board, I think we can. Sure seems cleaner because the rest seems Gordian to.
Are you thinking maybe that might be in the policy to limit it to that facility?
We can make that.
We never really talked about it expressly limiting it to that facility, but that facility would be the easiest one to thread the needle on. And my thought was, if a group wants to have a crab feed or some other event, that maybe they can figure out a way to thread the needle that we haven't figured out yet and present it to the board. But, you know, anybody that asks, I would be completely honest and say it's going to be extremely difficult to meet all the criteria at the high school or at one of the K-8s because.
Yeah, and the criteria is not, we're not setting the criteria to eliminate it. We're setting the criteria to obey the law. And, but I do have a question. I think the two of you feel that a child playing on the playground is not present if, you know, in the event. And I think my fear is, I think like Trustee Pombo, that I'm more afraid of what the attorneys, you know, what the attorneys are going to do when they strap on the 6 guns, you know, and go at it at high noon. You know, but I'm curious for your thoughts. Well, I'm sorry, if I put words in your mouth, I
No.
apologize. But I'm curious to hear the rest of the committee's thoughts, if I may, on that topic, because I think that's pivotal. Because if you say that on the playground is present, you know, is anywhere on the campus is present, then that's a completely different scenario than just in the area, et cetera. And I actually could probably go either way. But.
And I think that that's something that the 5 board members will have to,
Once we, yeah,
you know, and
we're only doing a recommendation, right? And so then it goes to the board, and if they disagree as a group, then it comes back to us.
and I'm not sure if we're tasked with making a recommendation for that or making a recommendation for a process to get to that. You understand what I mean? Well, we're talking about security, so many security guards and that stuff, but we're not saying, you know, they have to be placed at each point of ingress and egress or any of that. That's something that the whole board would determine at, you know, on a case-by-case basis, I think.
Oh, no, I interpreted it different, that our mandate was to come up with a recommended policy that we felt met the requirements of the law. And if we feel that having security manning the entryway then is what we're going to need to do, then that would be one of the criterion included here. That's how I interpreted it. Did you interpret it differently?
No, I wanted to point
You
out,
both are putting me on the spot. I'm not picking either one of you, okay? I'm making my own opinion here. I think the task that I was given that night was twofold. Come up with a process in which the interprets 1330 and is a proposed method to allow outside groups to use our facilities for alcohol-related events. But I think the underlying theme, because it was a part of that same discussion, was and where. I think that was a part of what we were to talk about. Because if you remember, there were a number of trustees that talked about PDC, some said something about the high school, the K-8, and things like that. So I think we were tasked with both of those I think both of those items we were tasked with then to bring back to the board so the board could look at it, tear it apart, debate it, and come up with a decision. That's my understanding.
So I was reading again what you have written, and it looks like the interpretation, just from looking at this, the interpretation of that point about students being present is that there are no other student activities on the campus during the requested event date and time, which means student activities would have to have been scheduled through civic permits or however student activities are scheduled. And if there are no student activities scheduled, then the organization could hold an event with alcohol. Because there are no other restrictions in what we've written about having no students anywhere on grounds.
Let me define why I put student activities there the way I did. They're not in civic permits often.
Okay.
And we would have to go through the principal of the high school because there are at any time 20 or 30 different student activities, clubs, co-curricular, extracurricular, sports, et cetera, going on at any one time. And that's the best person to go through to get the master calendar of who's doing what where to figure out if it's even plausible that there are no kids on campus at that time. I was a principal of a high school, and I supervised a lot of different high schools. And that task alone goes with the Gordian knot because as the high school grows, and it's going to continue to grow, there's more organizations, there's more clubs, there's more co-curricular activities, there's more of everything. And once you get to 2,500 kids on the campus or when it's built out, that's going to be very, very, very difficult to find a date that you can do that, particularly on a Friday or Saturday.
Right. No, but but it sounds like using it one of the K through 8 schools would be much easier in terms of that aspect and not having a conflict with student activities.
Lammersville doesn't have a shared use agreement, Lammersville School. It's outside of Mountain Home.
Yeah. And I'm not certain that the shared use agreement would absolutely preclude us from ever
Right. It's not
locking
unlawful.
Right.
It's
Right.
a MOA, or
MOU.
MOU, sorry.
So, I'm not sure. I believe that I believe there are some board members who will be on the side of no kid within
Yeah.
in the boundaries of the entire campus. So I don't know how we,
And from I don't know, from a policy perspective or a legal perspective, and I don't know if anyone can answer that, can we put a definition of what it means for no student present? If we put that in our policy, will that,
We talked to the attorneys about that,
yeah.
and they said no students on campus.
Meaning
None.
the boundaries of the school.
Yes. When we were going through this
Okay.
8 or 9 months ago, when we were talking about generally, and then we asked about that language, and then cordoning off.
And that's where, that
That's
must
my
be where I got
recollection.
that must be where I got my opinion. Then I'm sitting here going, man, I don't know that you have to go that way, but
But-
now that I remember, you're right.
but of course, lawyers are,
Heavily conservative.
yes,
Yes.
typically err on the side of, no, that's not quite far enough. We're going to go a little farther. So, and, you know, if we ask the lawyers, they would say, just don't have a policy. Don't allow it ever anywhere,
Well, that is a policy.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So have we met our mission for tonight?
No. You see me, I'm here ready with my pen. I'm just waiting. Come on, guys, let's do this.
If we push this forward, we're going to be telling community groups, there's a path for you if the board adopts it as well. And I don't feel like there is a path here.
And I think we need to have something cleaner to bring to the board than just what I have here. I mean, this is just a process here. I think we need to have something cleaner and more complete to bring to the board.
I agree.
So that because I think that's what they asked me to come here and do with this group. Well, if we can't, we go back to the board and we tell them that we can't. I mean, I don't.
I don't think we're prepared to go back to the board with an answer, after today's meeting.
We did something like that before, but I don't remember we did a study session early on.
Well,
I was thinking about what you had stated about if kids were somewhere on the campus, but they weren't near the event, that sometimes, and not that there are events that have alcohol, but we've seen people come with their children, and then they let their children run free on the grounds because they're at this event and the kids can go play on the playground. So I worry about bringing alcohol to an event and families coming to this event and not having their kids in the building, but they're letting the kids roam the campus. So that might be something to think about putting if you do want to move forward with something, noting it's not a family event if there's alcohol. Don't have your children with you.
And the only
running
facility that
loose.
doesn't have playgrounds
Correct.
is the high school.
Right.
Or the PDC.
I just don't think it's an option with the high school. There's just too much going on there all of the time.
That seems like a bar that's impossible to, and on the off chance all the stars align and there's no activities, you have to have a community organization that's willing to put all that effort and planning on the off chance that nothing comes up.
So we have, though, this other facility that is going to be available in about a year, and it has taken us 18 months to get to this point. I say we move forward and still come up with a policy or something so that when this facility does open, we don't have to start all this all over again.
I have an idea, and I will allow input, or well, I don't want to say allow because that makes it sound like but I would like to ask Trustee Clements his opinion on this, and anyone else can give their opinion. What do you think of taking it, getting it as put on the agenda for the next board meeting as a discussion item to try to come up with a definition of, the board's definition of no students on, because we can do whatever we want, and if the rest of the board is adverse.
It's a no-go. then
That's
it's a no-go.
fair. I think that's a great idea. I think that's perfectly fair to say, look, we need to know what the board is going to determine the definition of present is, whether it's the boundary. Before we do that, though, yes, I think we should. And I would like to rehear what the attorneys said, to make sure that, because I seem to recall you're correct, because that's where I got the impression.
ever.
But at the end of the day, I think it really does rest with, if we're held to the standard of no students within the boundaries of the school property, it's a completely different and insurmountable, almost insurmountable obstacle.
I don't know about that. I mean, the schools lock. There's nothing to say you can't lock the schools.
But I'm saying the actual, if present is defined as in the boundary, not just in the school, then in the parking lot, walking through the parking lot, like you can go down a rat hole with that. And I don't think, I think that there might be a reasonable interpretation that's less than that.
But
But if the board isn't going to determine.
my thought is, if the majority of the board does not agree that there's something other than absolute, the absolute within the boundaries of the campus, then we can go back and forth all we want here, and when we take it to them,
Wills.
it'll be,
I'm absolutely agreeing with you.
Yeah, okay. I can agree with that.
so I'm guessing we are kind of,
We're kicking the can.
What would you like me to do?
what I would suggest is that I will endeavor to get this discussion item placed on the agenda for the next board meeting, and we'll discuss it, and then we will formulate a plan as to what we put on the agenda for the next facilities meeting, dependent on what comes out of the,
Because I think that's a
discussion item.
fair, I think that's a fair, I mean, that's a pretty big distinction difference. And I
If-
think it's a fair question.
I think that if the definition as accepted by the majority of the board is that no students can be within the boundaries of the campus, then we move forward with this, looking at it as an only the, no, I'm forgetting,
The professional.
yes, the
PEC.
professional development building as tailored to that building
Yeah.
and forget the rest of it, because if there's no way to do it on the campus, then why have anything
Right.
in the policy that,
Okay.
I want to give them something they can use, and you're right. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
thank you.
So we're going to move on and have a discussion item related to the definition of what the board definition is of present, and then I'm going to go back to my attorney paperwork, and if there's no clear answer there, I will contact our attorney and find out what their interpretation is of AR 1330 and where it says students are present. Is that my,
Yes, sir,
okay.
Thank
I
you.
believe so.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Can you tell attorneys, like, even if this, or even if that, what if it's locked and gated and secure? Attorneys have
I think we're on B.
They do from.
Can we,
superintendent, if the superintendent's asking
would you mind if
questions,
we,
or if we direct them to, yeah, they'll answer all those questions.
yeah,
Okay,
maybe we can move
that's B. It's,
C up and then move A ahead of B on,
certainly, we can, you want to go to BB, or, sorry.
CB.
Yeah.
Want to move to CB?
These ladies have been patiently waiting for us, so.
I apologize, ladies, I did not realize that that discussion was going to become quite so robust. Moving on to item C, Facilities Use Handbook, item B, Facility Use Priority. If you ladies would like to speak to that.
You can come up and look. You want me to give my presentation so they know
Yes.
what we're talking about? Okay. So let me start with, okay, let me start with presentation. Previously, we discussed the prioritization and fees section of our facilities handbook, in that there was language in there that indicated that individuals that came in to use our facilities that had a nonprofit number that was older than somebody currently using our facilities would basically step in front of the line of somebody that's been using our facilities in good practice here in the community. So I was asked to go back and redo some language, and then after that, I also spoke with Board President Balzerini about this, and we had a conversation about the language. And I think I've come up with some more simplified language than we had before, and maybe even a simplified process that kind of adheres to what we talked about in previous meetings. So why don't I read the language first, and then I'll talk about the process.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to skip down from the groups part, and I'm going to start with each tier has an associated fee schedule. If two organizations submit applications at the same time for the same dates, for the same location, priority will go to the organization with the earliest LUSD priority number. So what I mean by that is a simple way to solve our issue, similar to what we talked about at the last meeting, is we give priority numbers to the people that have been using our facilities in good faith historically here in Mountain House. And the first user on the fees request that's in good standing gets 1. The second user gets 2. The third gets 3. It's pretty simple, and we work through the numeric process. Then when it's time to open our facilities use, we can go through that numeric process backwards, first, second, third, fourth, to getting their facilities once those people have reserved their facilities that they've reserved in good faith over time, then the, what's our system called again, Jimmy? I'm having a senior moment. Thank you. Civic permits. Then civic permits opens, and everyone else that has new items to request, or even those 1, 2, 3, 4, those people that have historic use, if they have a new item that they're requesting, then they go in with everybody else once civic permits opens, and they request to use the fields just like we do currently. That would allow us to honor the people that have been using our facilities, and somebody that comes in from Michigan that has an older tax ID number than somebody that's been in Mountain House for 12 years doesn't get to trump them and go take the field that has been used by that organization for 12 years.
I think I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to give you a hypothetical, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Say that, and I'll just use random organizations that I can remember the name of. Mountain House Flag Football has been using the Bethany Field for 8 years. I think it's been longer than that, but we'll say 8 years. Another group, Mountain House Little League, has been using the field at Bethany or at Cuesta for 9 years. They decide they want to use Bethany instead of Cuesta. Who would have?
That would be a new use. What we discussed at the last meeting was the facility that they've used historically in good faith. So if they've used Wickland or they've used Bethany, that is their facility of use. If they're going to go to another facility, that's a new use, right?
If flag football is a bad example, but I'm gonna use it anyway because they've been here forever. If they've been historically using Wickland, right? And they're like, well, and they only need one. This organization only needs one field for whatever it is they're doing. And they decide, we like Altamont Field better. They've been doing it for years and years and years. And another organization's been using it has been using Altamont for 2. Then we would look at that organization and say, no, you have to stay at If you stay at Wickland, you get your priority. But if you try to move, you lose all that priority.
Yes, they go back to with everybody else. They compete with everybody else. And if that 2-year group wants it again as a 3rd year, that group would be the new group coming in. If you use the flag football example, they were over here and they want to come over here. Well, they're now year 1 over here. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? That way it keeps the seniority basis, and the people that have been here and in good faith using our facilities, they have the seniority, so to speak, for that field for that time.
And this is in lieu, because the last time we discussed it, if I recall, which my memory is for shot these days, but we were talking about having it open for longstanding communities for a while earlier, and this is in lieu of that concept.
No, this
Would
is
be in conjunction with that,
this
right?
is that. This is that. So before civic permits opens, you go back to the people that have been here. They have the repeated rights to the field. And then when you expend that, then you open permits, and then all the new permits go in.
Okay, all right.
Does that make sense?
I understand what you mean.
I have another, and it's not exactly hypothetical because I believe the situation currently exists, that a group had historically a certain field or facility. It wouldn't matter if it was a field or a multi-use room, whatever, and got bumped somehow, and now there's a new group there. Would the historical group have priority over the new group who may have been there for a year or 2?
As we discussed last time, we're going to facilitate a meeting and explain this to the people, the seniority list, which it's only 8 or 10 folks, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to bring them together and discuss this new process. Here's the new process. Here's your numbers. We'll give them their numbers and make sure that we all have a discussion and make sure those priority numbers are right. We'll work out the fields and everything, and so we'll have a starting point, and everybody agrees, okay, this is the way it needs to happen. But the other thing we're going to do is say, this is the deadline. If you're adding new requests, facility or civic permits opens on this date. Nothing is going to be held for you at that date. You need to get it done, get your requests in. So I think it does two things. One, the historical record and those that have been here in good standing get their first choice because they've been good partners with us. And then if they want to add, they have to compete with everybody else when Civic Permits opens and get in their request. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Would the historical groups be given any priority for new, say that a group flag football has used Bethany Fields for many years. They're expanding, they would like to use an additional field at Wickland. Nobody else has priority for that, for the time frame they're talking about. Would they have priority, or would it just be first come, first serve after the window opened?
I think the fairest thing to do is the civic permit window opens and they put in their permit. And then they use it year after year, then they have seniority on that field and it builds up again, right? And as we open new fields, which we are doing every other year, I think that'll occur around and people will kind of get their niche. You know, one group will be over here at Hanson, one group will be over here, and year to year we won't have any arguments because that's their field, and year to year that's what they get to use. But when they expand, I think they have to compete with everybody else. I think that's fair.
It also encourages other leagues to start because so they can get a foothold somewhere and have their facility too. Some of the smaller leagues.
Yeah, because if you have somebody that comes in and they're playing, let's say they're doing ultimate frisbee, and they have 2 years of it, and they've got a good group, and then a group that has seniority comes in and wipes them out. No, I want that field. That doesn't seem fair if they're in good standing, right? So it seems to me they would have to, the group that has seniority at another field would have to start again if they wanted to expand to another field.
My thought was more if you have absolutely new group coming in and an established group wants the same facility, then it becomes a first come, first serve on the civic permits. Not that a flag football could bump another group who's been there
around
for a couple of years.
years.
But if they both want it at the same time, in essence, then it's just whoever pushes the button first on the first day of the window. Well, they would have standing with the district, but not,
They wouldn't have
They
a
wouldn't have-
priority number at the new facility, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's first come, first
First
served.
come, first served.
First come, first served. However, if there is a tie, if somebody wants the same facility at the same time, at the exact same time, and they got into civic permits at the exact same time, and there are two groups that are tied, the one with the senior, it can't happen, can it?
I think if
That's
it's a
the
split
system won't
second,
let it. Someone
Yeah,
has to get theirs
somebody
in
will be there
first.
first. That's right. So that's not gonna happen.
I mean, sometimes you just can't expand. And
Yeah,
that's
well,
just
we-
the way it goes. We have to encourage
I wasn't questioning the proposed policy. I was questioning my understanding of, making sure I understood what we were
You were
proposing.
clarifying, not questioning.
Right. All right, if you ladies followed any of that, you're welcome to come up and,
It actually helps clarify a lot. So my name is Becky McDougald, and I'm with West Coast Soccer. This is Jamie Reynolds. She's one of our parents who her daughter has been in our program for
8 years.
8 years. Okay. So just a little bit, I'm trying to understand what happened because we basically were a user group that have been using Wickland Field since we merged with Mountain House Soccer Club, and I think they established somewhere like 2008, 2009. We merged with them in 2012, and since then, our fall and our spring program has been at Wickland Fields. Last spring, I was kind of new to the civic permits thing. We actually had somebody named Aaron who did all the reservations and helped me out, and then he ended up moving to Indiana, so I was kind of new to the civic permits, and I missed the email for the open date of the spring of 2018. So when I went in to reserve the fields, I couldn't get in. And there was another user group that was in, and I was told, well, you know, it's first come, first serve. And I was like, okay, you know, I can understand that. They ended up renting at Wickland Field 2, and we had to take 1 and 3. So like you were saying, good neighbor, if there's 8 people in the multipurpose room, why not move them into a classroom? So we had asked, hey, do you think that we can try and work together here? And, you know, maybe you guys go on Field 3, since we have about, in our spring program, we have about 200 players. They had about 25, 30 players out there. And can we move you guys over so we can be together, so our program to be together? They wouldn't move. So then we sent an email, hey, do you think you guys can help us work together? And it was, nope, first come, first serve, good to go. So we just dealt with it. You know, we had our youngers on one side, our olders on the other side, and but I was very concerned about this happening again. So I had actually asked for a meeting, and we got in a meeting. We met with Jimmy and Aria, and it was myself, our director, and then our recreational director, and it was a good meeting. And I guess I had misunderstood how the true first come, first serve basis is, because I was told you're going to get an email, and then it's going to say it opens on this date, and you go in and, you know, you reserve the fields. And if you reserve the fields for the same date, you know, same time and everything as someone else, it's going to go to the nonprofit group. So November 16th comes around. My work day is a little bit different. You know, we work until 7 o'clock, so I don't start until 10 o'clock. So I went in and tried to reserve the fields, and literally it said, you know, they were all taken. And so I immediately emailed and said, hey, you know, I just want to find out what's going on, because I was under the assumption that it was kind of going to be like an open window per se, that everybody gets the reservation requests in, and then you guys look at it based on kind of what you're talking about now. And, you know, from experience, because we do have our another competitive program in Livermore, that's kind of what they do. All the user groups put in their requests, and then they look at it and say, okay, you guys have been here on these fields for this long, on these fields for this long, so let's prioritize and do that. So, you know, my misunderstanding, but then, you know, in reading it's changed now, but the old bylaw there, handbook, it was supposed to go to the nonprofit organization. So the organization that's there is a for-profit organization. So Soccer Shots is a franchise. They are for-profit, they're not nonprofit. We've literally been on Wickland Fields for almost 10 years. And so I truly thought, well, it'll get resolved, and, you know, we'll be able to get onto our field, because after all, the community knows West Coast Soccer as at Wickland Fields. I mean, we're the green and the black. I'm sure if you've driven by there on a Saturday, you'll see us out there. So now we've been told, sorry, you know, you didn't click that button fast enough. And we went ahead and we reserved Cuesta just because we have to have fields for our program. But the frustrating part was several emails this was November 16th, and we literally just last week got our confirmation on, okay, sorry, it's not ruled in your favor. The other user group is going to get the field. And so I just want to know, like, how did you guys come to that conclusion? Why, you know, because now what you're talking about, this new thing, we're going to lose that priority to get on there, because we didn't, that new user group is going to take over our priority, because they're the last ones on the field, and we're going to start a new priority at Cuesta. We want to stay at Wickland. That's been our home for 10 years. So, you know, we were trying to be neighborly and say, okay, well, we'll just do this one spring season here, but in reality, we really would like to be able to have our program where it's always been. So I'm just kind of wanting the feedback on the discussion of why we're allowing a for-profit organization to trump a nonprofit organization that's been in the community for 10 years.
So let me ask you a question. Are you saying we should hold the fields until a nonprofit reserves the field?
No, no,
Because if somebody comes in and reserves the field
no.
prior to
literal-
you reserving the field,
Right, but that literally
we
on the.
I'm just asking for,
Yeah, no, I'm not. If we were to have missed the deadline and a month later go, hey, no, that's my fault. That's my bad. But literally the day it opened, I went in to reserve the field when I got into the office, and someone had already, so on November 16th, the day it opened, but because and so that day I emailed. So it wasn't like I was late, it wasn't anything, but it does say in your handbook that if someone's asking for the same time frame, so that's contradictory if you're saying at the same time and it's impossible to do it at the same time. Your system doesn't allow you to do it at the same time. So then that's a contradictory statement because it's saying same date, same location, the priority will go with the organization that's the nonprofit.
The other group is a nonprofit, so I don't know where you're coming from.
Soccer Shots,
They have a number. They're classified as a 2A in our system, and
You go
they
on
have a nonprofit number that's active. So
you go on California state tax exempt.
we check it through the system. They're a nonprofit. So we check the EIN number, and it's valid. So
Can I say something?
you can say all you want. I just have a different interpretation of what you're saying. We sent
I
the
want to
memo
speak
out,
as a
and
mom,
so
a resident who lives here, who's been part of this program. I'm also a coach. So I have two different hats. I look at this at two different ways. I have so much pride that my kid plays for West Coast Soccer. She has moved up and she's been on the comp teams, which is offered to our children here in Mountain House. They have ways to move up. If you look up West Coast Soccer, all the scholarships that are offered to these kids, they're going to college. On the other side, here's the other, I'm going to do pros and cons here. Not to say that they're not doing good by offering soccer to our children. They only go up to age 8. They can't offer our children what West Coast has. Not to say that they're a bad organization, they're not. But if I put on my coach's hat, we need the space. They're coaching 300-400 children versus, I'm going to be very generous, 75 can we be good neighbors? We have good standing. They can easily make 3 fields out of the Cuesta track, not the Cuesta track, the Altamont track, or the Cuesta field. Their children are only up to age 8. U.S. Soccer, they're playing 4 versus 4. They don't need fields that big. We need the accommodations to the demand of what we have here in Mountain House for these kids. We need those fields. Those are soccer fields. Troy will happily take Cuesta if that's what's giving to him, but those aren't soccer fields. And you were saying appreciate the fields. The baseball players should appreciate the fields. We do appreciate those fields at Wickland. So, and to be good neighbors, it makes more sense. Let them pay to use those other fields. You can get good use out of them, but the reason why they're trying to pay they don't need all of that field. They are trying to come in here. In their eyes, they're a franchise. They would love to bump West Coast Soccer out of here. That's the big field. That's the one that all the parents drive by, and they're going to be like, oh, we're going to sign our kids up for soccer. Why would we take from something so great for our kids and allow that? It doesn't make sense to me. As a mom, it's great for the little ones. Sure, if they want to go to that organization, that's fine, but they're also a franchise. They're not offering what West Coast can offer our children. And I would think West Coast has been good to our community, and I would just ask for that loyalty, that same loyalty back, that we could have our fields. Why couldn't the 75 children for that organization use a smaller field, because they don't need the giant field?
As I said, last year, their spring program only used one field, and it was field number 2 in the middle of our, and it was like 25 kids. So
I'm all for soccer. I'm all for more soccer, more soccer, more soccer. I'm not knocking that organization. I'm just saying, like, we can all be here, but why should we move something that's been so wonderful to our community somewhere else when the soccer fields are at Wickland?
Mind if I respond to that?
Go ahead.
So I think that the whole idea and discussion that we had at our previous meeting and the whole background on this new verbiage is to prevent things like this from happening, in that the groups that have been here in long standing and have a seniority number would have the opportunity to get an email prior to the opening of civic permits and schedule your facility that you've been using in good standing. That whole structure is exactly for this reason,
Right.
right? So I think I'm not speaking out of turn when I say that your seniority on the field, when we have our meeting, will be recognized when we meet with all the coaches. I don't think we can undo what's been done right now in the short term because of timing and the fact that they're both 2A organizations. However, moving forward, I think we're trying to make it better and trying to refine our systems and how we release our fields to the public and make it more fair for people that have long-standing relationships with us.
Right, and like you said, the timing of it. But that's
Right,
my issue is that I've been trying, and there's been multiple emails, Troy, multiple texts, multiple phone calls with no response back, trying to get this resolved quickly because we knew if it goes till now, it's going to be hard to say to that organization, hey, you guys need to move. So I guess I need to understand the communication, like what else do I need to do in order to get better communication?
Well, I think we can work on that offline. I don't think that's this group's role to talk about how communication works between civic permits, and I think we can fix that offline.
Can I ask that? So if this season they were to use Cuesta, next season we want Wickland back. Are we now behind the soccer shots? Do they have priority to Wickland?
That's what I'm majorly concerned about.
Well, as I said just a few moments ago, that's why we're going to have a meeting with all the coaches, and we're going to go through the seniority process with a number, as long as this group is okay with the new language and the new process.
Can I ask you to consider the sizes of the fields that we need? Because they coach all the way up to, 14, 15 years old. That's a full-size soccer field, where the other organization needs smaller fields. And it only makes sense. That was my whole point of bringing up how many kids are there, is they need these bigger fields to accommodate the age groups. You can't go to Altamont track with as many kids as they have. That's one field where he can make 3. I don't even know if it's a he. Whoever the organization leader is, they can make 3 out of that one with the littles. It makes more sense. But.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's water under the bridge, so to speak, for this season, because the other group has been given the fields they were given, and you guys have the fields at Cuesta, which you have, and so I think your group is going to have to figure out how to work with Cuesta for this year. Hopefully, next year we can fix things, or at least get things back in a more equitable.
My alarm will be set at 8 o'clock, and literally,
What time does civic?
The new process, with the new process, you won't need the alarm clock.
Given a priority window that you won't have to compete,
And
you'll have a priority.
So are we? I'm curious because, and I think the underlying framework of their question is, okay, in this meeting that's going to come up where you're going to kind of rationalize it and give priority. Are they going to have priority to Cuesta because that's where they've been at this year, or Wickland because that's where they've been for 10 years and that's where they want to be? Because they didn't move to Cuesta willingly, and I'm not drawing a value judgment. I am simply asking, okay, how do you envision that playing out, or do you want to think about that?
Well, I think that it will play out organically during the meeting. And we will take into consideration at the meeting, when all the coaches are there, their seniority. That's when we'll give seniority numbers. It'll be the first go at this process. So their seniority number would be, I guess, older or a lower number than the other organization that you're speaking of.
Okay.
So that's why I said that this will shake out with this new procedure and be more fair, because that's what we've talked about at the previous meetings, making sure that we recognize that first come, first serve may not always work with some of the organizations that use our facilities.
That's right. That's what
Well,
Yes.
we're looking at possibly just this one season. And then if it all works out the way you're explaining it, but they're in good you can't say yes or no. Okay. Okay.
We're going to have a meeting.
Okay.
Um,
All right, it's hopeful.
Just for my own clarification, and I'm not, when Jimmy says that the organization has their nonprofit status, I'm not questioning that. What I am questioning is, if a group has nonprofit status, they will have a better priority number than a for-profit.
We don't have that. We have a tiered system for fees. We do not have
for
a tiered
priority.
system for priority. And that's not in our handbook, that process.
Jimmy, do you know if, I think you might be able to put different available dates to tiers. So you can say tier 1 can start putting in their applications on this date, tier 2 on this date, tier 3 on this date.
That is our intent with the
Right.
numeric system. So
'Cause
that,
we have 1 through 4 now. And so we can put in dates by tiers.
And can I ask Jimmy if what their nonprofit organization name is?
no,
I actually,
no.
oh, I can't.
I'll get back to you, but they have a number, they're classified as a 2A, and we checked the EIN number, and it's valid, so
His soccer
other
shots.
than that, I don't know what else, I check it in the system, I don't know what else to do, I'm not gonna,
I was trying to figure it out, so I had actually called the state of California and asked about their organization, and then I looked on their website, and nowhere on there does it say that they're a nonprofit, and the state didn't recognize them as a nonprofit, so I don't know what nonprofit number maybe they're doing business as something else or something, so. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
You know what, actually, I still see on the agenda soccer equipment, and I would just like to offer the fact that, I own a retail sporting goods store, and we'd be willing to, like, at cost, pretty much get soccer goals or soccer flags or whatever you guys might need, just as a give back to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't think we have a consensus on the language. If this is what this group wants to move forward with.
In respect to a tier having a priority over another tier?
Yeah. I do not believe that's in the facilities handbook when it comes to really the groups that trump are the schools. You know, they trump all the tiers when it comes to using a facility. So,
We could look into the possibility, as Alvina suggested, of opening the window at different times for different tiers, giving nonprofits a short head start, new nonprofits a short head start over,
Existing for-profits?
or
Yeah,
just new for-profits.
yeah. I just want to make sure that we don't create a process that's going to take so much staff time that they're pulled away from
Right.
other duties that they have, currently.
Have we typically had a problem? Like, is that a problem that we're trying to solve, is where the not-for-profits are getting pushed out by, this conversation notwithstanding, where for-profits are getting pushed out by, or not-for-profits are getting pushed out
No.
by for-profits?
Not a-
So it's
Well,
not
what
something
the
that we.
problem is that organizations like West Coast and other organizations are used to being the only game in town, so to speak. And so they're very casual about putting their permits in. And so they, now there's other groups coming in and there's competition, basketball, soccer, other organizations, and they're all fighting for the same spaces. And, on the system, first come, first serve, and whoever gets it in first gets it in. The one last spring, they came to me 3 months after the other team had their permit in and wanted me to bump the team. I wasn't going to do it. It's, 3 months later. So, it's just the way it's set up. I think that there's way more competition, more people coming to Mountain House, more kids, and there's only so many spaces for these organizations. So they're butting heads a little bit. I think they're throwing each other on the bus sometimes with us a little bit. So to try and make the other team look bad. So that's just where we're at. So we're having this meeting, and we could hopefully carve out equally where everybody could go and kind of set a standard, so to speak, moving forward. And if they remain in good standing and good stewards of the school and so on and so forth, they could renew their permit from now till whenever. If not, then maybe someone else gets their spot. So that's kind of why we came up with this whole thing.
Would it entail extra staff time to stagger the opening of the windows in civic permits?
It'll be extra time for us, yes.
Will it?
Yeah, but
It's not just simply putting it in the,
it's not a huge amount of time, but it's just more. It's more time, but it is what it is. If it works out better for the process, that's fine.
Well, there's a lot to consider there, because, so we have the tiered fee structure in our facilities. So then we're going to have a tiered opening of permits or civic permits for groups. That can get pretty rough. It's not just fields, it's basketball courts, it's classroom use, it's learning, it's everything that we have. So then it'd totally restructure how we release our facilities to the public by creating another structure, the tiered structure. So it's not just the fields, it would become all of it.
And
The MPRs for the basketball leagues and different stuff.
well, and that was my question, was whether are we solving a problem that we don't have by staggering the tiers? And what I'm hearing is we don't have it might happen occasionally, but we don't have a problem where not-for-profits are being pushed out by the
No, it's-
for-profits. So,
Yeah. How many for-profits do we have reserving facilities,
Most of the for-profit stuff we have are organizations that don't do sports. They use a multi for something else. Those are usually aren't a lot of sports group that use
anyway, I wasn't trying to
facilities.
unnecessarily complicate the process. My thought was, if all it is putting, punching into the civic permits system, that when you enter your tier, if you are 2A, you can do it, you can start now. And if you are a tier 3, the system won't accept it until day after tomorrow or something like that. If that was the only difference, then I don't see that it would complicate things. If there is staff resources that I'm not seeing, then I don't want to unnecessarily complicate the process.
I don't know that it's a problem at this juncture, and I think we should solve what we have in front of our face right now, because that sets a good base for moving forward. And I don't think we've ever met with the groups, because like Jimmy said, there was only a few groups in town. Now it's starting to grow, and we need to recognize the groups that are here, establish them, make sure they understand the process, and then move forward. If we start a tiered structure like that, I think it'll affect all of our facilities' use
All right.
moving forward. I don't think we have a problem at this juncture. Later on, if we do, maybe we can, if it becomes a problem.
Well, I was thinking if there was a simple fix for, you know, to preemptively solve a problem that we
Right.
don't yet have.
Yeah.
But if it's going to complicate matters, then it's probably not worth delving into at this point. All right, if I can figure out where I went and how I got there. I believe we were on item B, school.
Well, Mr. Pombo, can I get consensus of whether that language
yes.
works for everybody or not on
What?
the changes to the,
I think we said that two organizations cannot submit applications at the same time for the same dates, for the
Correct.
same, so
that needs to be changed.
that needs to be changed.
So even though when we open up this, this period for these high priority, sorry, that didn't come out right. For the people with the earliest LUSD priority number, they're still gonna put it in civic permits and it'll still be first come, first serve? No, okay.
Our intent was, previously, the last meeting, we talked about opening up early for those that are in good standing and regular users.
Yep.
Just like concert tickets, you know, if you're a Chase
Yep.
bank member, you get the tickets before everybody else, that same sort of thing.
And is that gonna be just an email to somebody? Or, because if that's the case, then this would need to stay the same time, same location.
If it's for the priority, I'm gonna give you an email. Two people can submit this same request. It's
Right.
not going into civic permit, so to me, that
But-
does make sense.
But according to the priority system, there would be, one would have a higher priority.
But it's not.
But the language does make sense. I don't understand where the language doesn't make sense.
Okay, so during the early admission period, during the early application
There
period,
you go, yeah.
okay?
Right.
If you submit on day, and how many days is it?
We haven't decided that yet.
Let's say it's,
okay,
let's say it's 5 days. If you submit on day 1, you submit on day 2, I submit on day 3, we all submit for Wickland, and I've been at Wickland for 10 years. Even though you submitted on day 1, you submitted on day 2, and I submitted on day 3, I'm within the early application
Yes.
period, and I would still get it. So the verbiage of "at the same time" is not the relevant piece.
I see what you're saying.
It's during the early application period,
Okay.
the applications for the same place, time, whatever, will be determined by seniority, something like that, right?
Yes, but we shouldn't have an issue like that you just explained, because the user groups, or the groups that have been using the fields, we're going to bring them together at a meeting, and we're going to carve out where they've been historically and what they have, and that is their, along with the facility, they have a priority number. So if she had a priority number at Cuesta and wanted to move to Wickland where you had priority, she would have to wait and go back to the start when
Yes.
the system opens for everyone
They can only use their priority
at their field,
They
at their
can't use
field
their
and time.
priority
So I-
at the new facility.
So if they don't sign up if they don't participate prior to the deadline that we give them, they lose that and they go in with everybody else if they don't meet the deadline.
So do we wanna put something in here about that early opening?
Yes.
timeframe?
I think we have
Because
to,
That's not
yeah.
in here.
Yes.
So are we trying to figure out the verbiage for the early opening in this meeting?
I'm going to draft something and I'm going to bring it back to the next meeting because when do civic permits open for, is it,
Next open would be for summer.
so
What I'm trying to do is for fall.
when do we open for summer? May? And our next meeting's in May?
May
So, what we'll do, if it's okay with this group, is we'll meet with the coach, the user group, the users, before the next meeting, have that meeting, set priority with those users at that meeting. Then I'll bring back the new language, updated language to our next meeting, and then we can have it all done in one fell swoop. And then, obviously, this language would have to be ratified by the board when I bring the facilities use handbook in June to the board with all the changes we've made this year for ratification. Holy Toledo. Did I get everything on that, Mr. Pombo?
I think so.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. So the way I'm hearing what we're doing is we are going to meet with the organizations as if this was the policy before approving the policy and changing. And an organization that's not going to receive the benefit of the stature of priority could complain because we acted on a policy that we hadn't approved yet. And I don't want to be a stick in the mud. I'm more willing to have I hate to say it, but I'm more willing to have another meeting to approve this. It could be a brief one where that's the only agenda item is to just nail this out for you. But I think that's a better way to go, so that we follow our own policies and procedures.
You may have a point.
Ouch!
All right.
You guys are hammering me today.
Okay, so you want me to try to get another date for another meeting where we can
be a
just
brief one.
clean this up and
The whole purpose is to just nail this down.
clean this up? Okay.
We do have a section on field use, and the application windows for field use is December 1st through the 15th, and then we have another one June 1st through the 15th.
June 1st.
Was it June 1st?
We could do it.
When's the next meeting?
May 16th.
Oh,
And then how soon after is a board meeting? Because it will then have to be approved by the board.
Oh, yeah. Well, wait a minute. No, that's not necessarily, with this, it can be an addendum to the plan, because with the facilities handbook, we add addendums, and then at the end of the year, we go to the board and ratify all the addendums, right? Isn't that the procedure, right? So it could be an addendum, and then when I go to the full board with all the other items, it's included.
yeah. That's right. We can
Right.
change the procedures and act on them. We can't buy stuff. We certainly can't enact an alcohol policy without them.
I don't think we could if we were allowed to.
So, yeah, I think
What a great idea, no.
I think that's right. I think that works.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Is that okay, so I'll make sure I have good language for the next meeting. And as soon as we figure that out, then Jimmy and I'll meet with the other groups right after with the new language and explain the process. And then when I take the entire thing to the board in June, it'll be codified in the booklet. Does that work?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sorry, one more comment. So will that give enough time to do that early opening for those teams that want the prioritization?
I think that when we have the meeting, we could probably do that at the same time,
Okay,
right? They're the same people that we're talking about. They're all right there.
okay.
We could probably take care of it right there, that go round, right, Jimmy?
To do what?
Talk about field assignment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can do it. We can do it all right there,
Okay.
and then have it squared away.
All right.
Let me show you what you're saying.
All right. I think we're on the sports survey, boss.
All right. Item B, sports survey 6, 7, and 7, 8th grade student results. Staff report.
Okay, on your screen, you'll see survey results for 5th through 6th grade students. We surveyed all 5th and 6th grade students and all 7th and 8th grade students at the K-8 schools to ask them, hey, what sport are you interested in bringing to your school additionally to what you have currently? Currently, they have basketball and volleyball and no spring sport. We had sports like shin kicking, yes, then there were more than one of them. There were like 8 people that wanted shin kicking. We had,
Always been my favorite.
yeah, Tackle football and more basketball were the top 2 vote getters. However, tackle football is not an option for us. So what we did is we put a pie chart together with the most popular remaining sports that we could actually accomplish on the campuses. And you'll note that for the 5th and 6th grade survey, ultimate frisbee is the blue section, track and field is the orange section, and soccer is the gray section for 5th and 6th. So track and field and ultimate frisbee outweighed soccer. Soccer had 148, ultimate frisbee 161, and track and field 160. Can you scroll up? If you look at grades 7 and 8, track and field was 209, soccer was 149, and ultimate frisbee was 152. So track and field is a little difficult to accomplish at our school sites. We don't have tracks, we don't have necessary facilities. Ultimate frisbee and soccer are the remaining 2 sports that students were interested in the spring. So what I wanted to bring to this group was a proposal for to begin with soccer. We have the field space. It would be easy to implement, and perhaps work towards ultimate frisbee in out years for an additional sport in the spring. I've talked to the K-8 principals about adding sports to the spring. One of the things that has hampered our ability to have a spring sport is basketball goes really late because some weeks they only play one game in the week. Well, I talked to our de facto athletic director for K-8, Miss Wingo, and she indicated that she could contract the season and make it viable to have a spring sport. So as soon as volleyball ends, basketball would start, and basketball would end sooner so that we could actually have a real spring sport and play each other in a soccer or ultimate frisbee between the schools. All of our schools have the ability to have a soccer field or have a soccer field currently. A part of the soccer would be a requisite purchase of soccer goals, flags, nets, all that, liners for the field and all that stuff, which is on the agenda later in case we move forward with that. So that is our recommendation. Soccer and then maybe ultimate frisbee and then maybe even some cross country after that. But I think we need to phase it in because staff are generally our coaches or parents, and we're going to have to find 6 more coaches in the spring to do this activity. I'm not speaking of this spring. I'm talking about next spring because we have to negotiate the stipend. It's part of negotiations. So that's our proposal.
Discussion, questions?
Question. So I'm not drawing a value adjustment. I don't know. Why is football not an option for us? Tackle football? Is it because it's tackle?
I don't know of a junior high anywhere, 7th and 8th grade, that does tackle football.
Okay.
In California.
In California, okay.
No, there's plenty of private leagues that do it, but I'm not aware of any 7-8 school that does it.
And I think, to be honest, just the drawing a blank here, just the things that they would need, the shoulder pads and all the equipment.
Yeah.
Thank
Cost
you.
prohibitive?
You need
Yeah.
like
Would be cost prohibitive.
$40,000 to start, minimum $40,000 to start a small league.
Yeah.
School.
I-
School.
That's fine. And if there are no programs, then it's irrelevant, right? I mean, that's the thing.
Well, we could do intramural, any sport we want, but
Yeah,
but the
team's
cost
pretty big,
and
yeah.
the and
That
the
makes sense. Okay.
It does seem like community support for tackle football is waning as well. The numbers keep dwindling.
That's what I hear.
Sure.
I've had my hands in on this for a while, and I've gotten nowhere. I have emailed, and I've also spoken with Troy about this for a while now, and we've always wanted to merge the two together. Something to also think about is you keep saying spring. If West Coast Soccer had the fields during fall, you already have 3 and 4 fields lined. You could play multiple games at once. You already have people who can help get us our foot in the right direction. Like we have Becky, she can help us with the refereeing. They can help us with the uniforms. They have the goals to get us started so we can fund for goals and equipment and everything that's needed. It was this huge idea that I've had for like 2 years, and it was just brought to my attention less than a month ago, and I immediately jumped on it and we're like, I want in on this. I know as a parent I could be a ground soldier. I know that I can make this work with all the schools here. But if you needed help getting it started, West Coast would be willing to allow you to use their goals until we had the money to do it. It's expensive. You're saying football is $40,000 per school. Goalposts are not cheap. Believe it or not, they are expensive. And to keep them in good use and not stolen, and you have to store them. So there's another fee. There's also, the uniforms are so simple. They don't have to be, we have the West Coast uniforms now, right? They could still wear the same things that the rec kids wear, the black shorts, the black socks, change the color of the jerseys. Those uniforms are $30 for rec players. Parents would easily pay for that. I can tell you that the basketball jerseys, the parents are disgusted that their kids have to share those. And I can tell you, oh yes, last year Cuesta had to, their JV and varsity, as soon as the JV game was done, they had to give their jersey to the varsity to play. Disgusting. Disgusting. But that's a whole nother topic. I'm just saying, if you went in there and said we're gonna do soccer, it would be easy to get this off the ground by using West Coast. They can help you. Not saying that they would take over, but they could be a partner with you to get it started. If we had the fields in the fall, they're already lined for you. You're not paying the extra money to get them lined or having to get parents to line them for you. They already have, everything's done. And if you get the parents to help, with the coaching, I know you guys allow the teachers to do it as well. They get first pick. It's not something that would be hard to get off the ground here. But think about that when you suggest soccer, that they would be willing to merge with you and help you get your feet wet and get it started and rolled out. It would be so easy to do. So I don't know if there's somebody that I could, a direct person that I could contact and offer my expertise or help, if you guys could give that to me. No? You guys can't give me anything?
We're not even there yet.
Okay, I just
This
want
is ground zero.
Okay, well, when you move forward, can you maybe think about all that I just said? It would be easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think the request was approval, your recommendation was to move forward with soccer. You were asking for board consent, or excuse me, committee consensus. And I think for me it's a yes.
Yeah.
Anything that we can do to get more kids participating, because one thing that the survey showed us was more kids want to participate than we have activities. So a bunch of the kids put in basketball. We already have basketball, but a bunch of kids want more basketball. A bunch of kids put in volleyball, but we already have volleyball. They want more volleyball. So I think that as we move forward, we need to add more fall sport, another winter sport, but I think we need to take it in a graduated manner. We don't want to flood it, and we won't have people to coach it. So I think we need to take it step by step.
The other problem is multipurpose room space in
Yes.
the afternoons. So if you have multiple sports, it's challenging as it is for a multipurpose room space. So if you have additional sports, yeah, it's going to get even tighter.
Yes. And what we figured with the soccer is you can do 7-8 and 5-6 in the spring with the amount of sunlight we have and time we have. I think you can get through practice. They can do halves, and I think you can get through practice pretty easily. Some schools only have one field. Some schools have the ability to have multiple fields. Later on in this, I'm asking for some equipment as well. But that's our rationale.
No baseball?
You know what? Baseball was not in the top. Yeah.
So I think we,
I was sad there was no rugby. Yeah, there were only a couple with shin kicking.
I was sad not more credence was given to shin kicking, but I think we have a consensus to move.
So is this girls and boys?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
I'm just asking.
you betcha.
Yes.
So it'd be 4 teams per school?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've been talking about sports, adding more sports. Is there any, and maybe this isn't the venue, but is there any talk about adding more visual arts extracurricular type stuff? At one point, there was an orchestra. Mr. Rexall did a middle school orchestra. And I know many of the visual arts programs that are being done now are not visual arts, but are done by parents. So is there any discussion about that? And again, I apologize if this isn't the venue, but.
There is discussion about that. I'd be happy to talk about it afterwards and kind of give you some details of where we are with trying to figure out how to get more electives into our 6th, 7th, 8th grade students' schedules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where we are here.
Thank you,
Oh, the sports survey.
ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, were we done with the sports survey, or was there more?
I think the direction was that to go forward with soccer. Was that the
Yes.
direction?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And I apologize, I've been to dozens and dozens and dozens of committee meetings and board meetings, and I've never had the need to stop in the middle of a meeting, but, oh well. Moving on to, I believe, if I'm following my arrows correctly, theater language.
So in your handout section, it reads high school theater. We've talked about this a number of times. The last time that we spoke, I was given direction to add a ratio when it's the bottom bullet. I won't go through them all, but it's the bottom bullet. If the user has youth participants under 18 years of age, there must be adult supervision in all rooms at all times at a rate of 30-to-1 student to adult ratio. That was requested by this group. Something that was not requested by this group that was added because of a discussion between myself and Dr. Nicholas is bullet 7. That starts with LUSD is not responsible for any outside organization's message, opinion, or performance. There are some political machinations that go on in our society, and sometimes one person's opinion is not agreeing with the other. And if somebody's using our facilities justly and has paid and is using them appropriately, and somebody doesn't like the message, it shouldn't be left to us to bear the burden of punishment for for whatever's been delivered. So that's why that was added.
In other words, the statements made by others shall not be the responsibility of the owner of the facility.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Opinions expressed during events are not.
So the rest of the items that you've all reviewed and we went through previously, the one item was what you asked me to come back with. I came back with 2. So I'm looking for the go-ahead to take this to the board in June, along with all the other changes to the facilities handbook.
I think so.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to action items, I think. We hit everything above items, above 6. Consider the use of facility fees for soccer equipment, all schools. I'm guessing we had the staff report already, but if there's more to add?
Well, I put this on here hoping that you would agree with the idea of adding soccer in the spring. I think it would be an appropriate use of facilities fees to purchase soccer goals and nets and flags and a chalk machine for each of the K-8 schools. I have a quote that Lavinia Woods got for me from our district vendor when it comes to sports equipment. We actually get a discount and a kickback on like a fundraiser when we use the group, and the total cost is $18,241 to equip all 6 of our schools to be ready to play soccer a year from this spring. Yeah, it's not real expensive.
So what we are doing is giving the go-ahead, if there's a consensus, to take that expense to the board for approval.
Yes, sir.
Would that purchase happen before when does the fiscal year end? The end of June?
June 30th.
Would it happen before the end of the fiscal year? And then if so, where would do we have place to store everything? We're not using it for a year?
Place to store everything?
Yeah, the goals and stuff?
The goals are good, are portable, they stay out in the field.
Yeah, but if we're not using them for a year, because we're not doing a spring soccer
Well,
this year.
when we get him, we would put him out because then the PE could actually use them and play soccer.
Oh, okay,
Some of the fields, we don't have soccer
okay,
posts for even PE,
okay.
except like Altamont and Lammersville. Well, that's a different situation. But,
Okay.
I see it.
yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
will take that to board. Okay.
All right. Item 2, stage curtains, other schools.
The last time we met, this group agreed to send me forward with a purchase for Cuesta for wing curtains in their on their NPR stage, so that during performances they could actually use the wings to come in and out of stage. You direct me to go and see, hey, what other schools need those items, and there are Hanson, Bethany, and Altamont also need wings, curtains. So we have a quote not to exceed $36,000. There are approximately 9,000 per school. Might be a little less depending on the structure.
I forget how much it was for Cuesta.
Cuesta was 8,100, but when we went back to him, he redesigned them a little bit because Jimmy did some measurements and sent some pictures of the stage, and he wanted to change the design for better use. The original design was the wings came, if the front of the stage is here, the wings came back like this and were just stored right here. Instead, he has the wings coming back and they turn and they store like this against the back wall. So they just turn slightly, which makes a lot more sense. And it added about $300 more to it, so about $8,400. I wanted to come here with a little extra in the budget, not to exceed, in case there's some structural issues or things that need to be done that may go over the $8,400 per school.
I don't know if you mentioned all the schools but Lammersville, but I noticed you did not mention Lammersville. Are the curtains there? They have
They
them.
have them.
And the curtains that are there are going to be able to stay there?
Yeah, as far as we know, they're
Okay.
able to stay there.
We
Maybe I shouldn't ask that.
yes, we are good.
So
Thank you.
I was actually thinking of that for the schools that are a little older, like Lammersville and Wickland. If they don't need wing curtains, what's the condition of their current curtains? Have they been up for a while and?
I can investigate. I can tell you a front curtain is probably 40 grand
Yeah.
or 50 grand. Is that about right, Jimmy? 40 to 50 grand? Yeah, I mean, they're really, really expensive. That's not to say that we can't explore that. Right now, I'm just taking care of the short need with
Okay.
the wing curtains. But that's not to say it can't be brought back to a future meeting, for both those schools' curtains.
Well, for 40 or 50 grand, we can tape them together.
Bed sheets. No. Well,
So
I think I think wing curtains enhance the facility's ability to have, quality productions, and I think it's fair to the kids to give them that, so I'm in favor of that.
I agree.
So
have
take that to
consensus?
the board.
Yes, sir.
Okey dokey.
Item 3, flooring, Cuesta stage.
The Cuesta stage is, what are the square tiles called, Jimmy? VCT. They're the white VCT square tiles. And they're getting pretty serious there about their productions. The tiles probably should have been dark when they were put in because it is a stage and you want, dark or black walls and darkened floors. They have requested to redo their floor so that it's a dark material and not the glossy white material that is on the stage currently. They're doing a lot of drama productions. They have an active drama group, and I was asked to bring this forward by the principal. The flooring costs $19,400. I'm requesting not to exceed $20,000. I know when we do flooring, sometimes things pop up when we're doing flooring that are not expected. So I'm asking to not to exceed $20,000 to replace the tile, not tile, CVT, VCT, sorry. Vinyl coated tile. Sorry, I keep saying the wrong thing. VCT at that.
Peel and stick.
There you go, at Cuesta. So.
The condition of the tiles, do they need to, I know that isn't the oldest school, but it's older. Do they need to be replaced anyway, or is it solely for the color? And if it's just the color, have we investigated the possibility of painting or coating them in some way that would achieve the goal at a lesser expense?
It's just the color, the tile's fine. And no, we have not investigated painting them. I can look into it if you want.
Just, $20,000 is a fair chunk of change, and if,
It is,
you know,
but it's the stage, there's an office, there's a stairwell on the right that goes down, there's a little tiny office to the right, there's a P office to the left, and there's another stairwell where the wheelchair lift is, so it'd be all that area. Because it's all the same level, so all that would be replaced.
anyway, I don't know what I don't know, but
Actually, it wouldn't be replaced, we're just gonna go over the top of it. It doesn't need to be removed, it's not, no demo, just lay it over the top of it. Sand and put over top of it.
so I don't know if something along the lines of the coatings,
Epoxy or something.
yes, that they use on garage floors or that sort of thing, if it would be something that would be feasible or not.
Will you help me come throw the vinyl flex out on the floor like the garage stuff?
Absolutely. I'm an old pro at that.
We will investigate that and come back with that.
That begs the question of if there are any other schools with white stage. Is the only one we did that way, huh?
It begs the question of why we did that.
Oh, oversight, I'm
Since
sure.
we're planning
Yeah,
for it.
Yeah, I guess that's the
Notes
next
for
one is,
future
can we make
schools.
sure that we don't do that again?
Gordon's baby.
Anyway,
Vinyl tile before, I don't know how it would work, but.
I am, for expediency's sake, I am not opposed to sending it forward to the full board as is with a not to exceed 20,000 and investigating other alternatives. And if we find something that costs 5,000, that's acceptable. That does not exceed 20,000, we can go ahead. If nothing else is cheaper or feasible, then I'm okay with going forward with that if the rest of the committee is okay with going forward to the board with a not to exceed 20,000 number, and if we can save money, we can save money, and if we can't, we can't.
If, I have a couple of questions if we're considering moving this forward to the board. So it is strictly the aesthetics of performances. That the white stage causes a negative, because I'm sorry, I'm an accountant finance guy. I have no idea. So I'm trying to understand the white stage is bad because, and I know there's a blank there, what does it do?
Well, a lot of times, and I'm no thespian for sure, but a lot of times the stage personnel dress in black so that they can't be seen behind the scenes. And if the floor is white, they show up. And also with props and stuff like that, things cast a shadow and different things. If there's a light color under other things, that would be my thought. I'm
And
not
any
sure.
stage lighting from above may reflect off the white floor,
Glare and-
so that you can't get the effect that you want in the production with the white floor.
Okay.
So we've also been given direction, and we're gonna do it ourselves, to paint all the walls black and the ceiling black and everything else, so everything will be black.
And I think that's been done at some of the other campuses already, right?
So on the next school, are we starting with black wall floors?
I'll make a note of that.
If that's where we want to get to, let's start there.
Do I have a direction, though? Was that?
I have a question, actually, for Alvina. I'm trying to understand that, the money that we have. So the 214,873
You have to,
encumbered by about 60,000.
you would have to subtract the encumbrance once it's paid.
Okay.
So it does bring that balance down.
How much did we spend tonight?
I was trying to add those up. I got 18,241 and I heard not to exceed 20,000. And did I hear a 5460? No, I didn't hear another number.
We left with 77.
For the wing
Yes.
curtains for the
Yes.
other,
Your math is
other
correct.
schools.
About $80,000 would be left in the fund after the encumbrances, and if everybody agreed with everything on this tonight, it would leave $88,000-ish in the account.
Jimmy, do you see any large projects coming up? I mean, the fields were, like the fields at Lammersville and the field at,
That would be the one that would come to my mind, yes.
and have you priced out? Do you have any?
We have a price for the field, which is kind of the east field or near the bus barn. We had a price, I don't have the price yet for the west field.
That field's coming out of
General fund?
L.
Oh.
That's been brought to board and approved to be paid for out of L funds many months ago now.
Okay.
I don't know where we're, even the west field too.
No, that has not. The Westfield has
We don't
not.
know the price yet, we don't know where that's coming from, so that could be a big project. It'll be similar in cost to what we spent at.
Just for point of clarification, the funds in this account were never intended to be the sole source of funds for the upkeep of the facilities. They were merely to help offset the wear and tear of the outside use of the facilities. So we don't, while I appreciate your concern, I guess I could say, we don't need to make sure that we have enough money to cover everything, all the upkeep of the fields and stuff in this account. Because there are other district revenues that we can put towards these things as well.
Right, because if we didn't have any public use, we wouldn't have any fees, and there wouldn't be any money, and we'd still have
We
to.
still have to do a lot of the,
I get that. I was looking at, well, what did we
What-
encumber? We have smaller fees, and then we have a big one for 55,000. I was just thinking,
No, it's
okay,
a
what do we have left to kind of repeat what we've historically done?
We've got 18,000
I
and,
think our expenditures were very minimal until this last year where we started using them.
And,
Yeah, yeah.
so stage curtains was 9,000, basically 9,000 per for 3 schools, right? So
Not to exceed, it won't
That's
be
correct.
that much.
that's 27,000. And then flooring, you said was 20, not to exceed 20.
He's an accountant, you gotta cut him some slack.
That's district recommendations, all three of those, or not?
I'm sorry?
Was that, is district recommendation to approve all three of those, or?
Yes.
He doesn't bring anything to us that he doesn't recommend, right?
Well, yeah, well, or that meet the criteria for how we should be spending the money.
Right, and I'm, maybe it's an obvious question, but you're familiar with how these things go and all that, and I'm like,
Yes, I
okay.
am.
So if you're saying, yeah, I think this is a good use of the funds, then I'm okay.
So we have consensus to move forward with the recommendation to the board on the expenditures.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, yeah, I mean, I think we're using the funds to, God, it's late. The kids are gonna have a better experience.
Enhance the facilities.
Enhance the facilities. I'm in agreement with what they're being used for. I wanted to just bring it out there that we spent, to me, a lot of money tonight. But, you know, the kids are worth it.
I will make sure that we investigate something other than VCT. LVT. It's getting late. LVT for the flooring.
nights in a
Maybe
row.
we can use some sort of acrylic or something on there and save us a ton of money. You know, if we can do that, then, and not damage the facility in any way, obviously. And I'm sorry, there is another one that I've asked to move up. I asked to move A up. So there's another one coming.
All right.
So,
I forgot about that.
Oh.
So that is no longer a future agenda topic. It is now an action item, topic number 4, correct?
yes, sir.
All right, staff report?
So those of you that have been in the MPR, the cafeteria at the high school, behind the stage, there's a mural of that's Mustangs, and it's got a Mustang. That mural was done by an artist by the name of Chad Hunter. And one of the things that a number of staff, people in this room, and folks at the high school have considered this wall at the high school, which is the north wall of the gym, very large space, of putting up some sort of mural, which is common to high schools.
This is directly across from the cafeteria or multi-use room,
See it
right?
from the street.
That's correct. Like the where the grass is in the foreground, further towards us is the where the buses drop off, the round, you know, where the there's like a half circle there. We have
The quad would be to the right of.
yeah, the quad would be to the right of it in the gate, yes. So we have 3 renderings from this artist. If you could scroll to the next one. And the next one.
Can you go back to so that one's mostly just the color of the lettering? That one is different, but the 2 and 3 are
I didn't see a difference.
mostly just, I think one, the lettering's white and one, the lettering's blue.
Yes, the lettering, and up at the top, it says Mountain House instead of Mountain. One of the other renderings just said Mountain. That one says Mountain, and then at the top in the blue stripe.
Oh.
Then if you look at the other rendering, it says Mountain House in the blue stripe.
I don't like mountain.
Okay, go to that,
Yeah,
there,
I
the
don't-
next rendering. The input that Mr. Faubert and I gave the artist was the gray lettering seemed to get lost, but the blue lettering of the Mustangs stood out a lot better with the gray shading.
I like this one the best, but I'm assuming that that the choice of that will go to the full board and not just this committee.
That would, yes, this is a big deal. Yes, sir. I just brought this as an item that we could do sooner or later. It is common to high schools. You always see a big mural at whether it's the Vikings or the whatever. And this wall is ripe for it because it's a big space. It's got nothing on it.
Yeah, it doesn't. And the Mountain House Mustangs that's there now, or what does it say, Mustangs even?
It's tiny, yeah.
It looks like size 10 font.
It does.
on a big blank wall.
Yes, it does.
Like you have to squint to read it?
Yes. When we walk by it, Dr. Nicholas and Mr. Faubert always point out, we need to do something with that wall. We need to do something with that wall. And we finally have a rendering and a cost to it. It's $20,000. But I'm bringing this to this group to,
So these are conceptual,
yes.
and like I just have to ask, is the artistic concept really to truncate the top of Mountain House on the very top band? Like the top of the letter is truncated. Is that an artistic?
Yeah.
Is that like an artistic?
It's an artsy thing, yeah. That I'm sure somebody will ask to have
Finance
changed.
guy, I look at that and go,
But I didn't get a full letter. I paid for a full letter. I didn't get a full letter.
Yes.
I didn't get the half a town thing, just mountain.
Yeah, I didn't get mountain.
I didn't
At
like.
least it wasn't mountain.
Yeah,
At least
Mount
it was an MT house.
But it
Yeah.
was like
House.
half art, half the town.
or moho.
It's getting late. We digress. Okay, sorry.
The only reason I brought this is because I was going to put it to the next meeting, but we received all the information earlier than we thought. So,
I like the bright colors in this one, the one that's up there now. It stands out a little more. But I like a combination, different things from different ones.
Well, I like the concept of, I like the concept.
Yeah.
You're bringing the concept, not which one we like best.
yes, ma'am, because I think the board will have to make that decision.
Yeah.
And that will be a long discussion, I'm sure.
And I'm sure none of these are the final iteration either. They can't be.
So I think we're conceptually supportive of a mural on that wall.
Yes.
I think the most important part that I was bringing forward is the cost and paying for it, with the potential of paying for it out of facilities fee money. The great thing that I think of this is every bus that pulls up stops right in front of us. And every group that comes is going to see this first. Every school, every band group, every football team, every basketball team, every volleyball team, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the kids that are there every day going to school also see it.
Yes.
You know, it gives them a little bit more school spirit. The horses are like actual horses. And
Did he give you any info if there's like a graffiti coating or something that goes over it?
I'm sure there is, but I will ask.
Just
One thing I like about it is it's behind the gate, so.
at least over the bottom half or something?
I was also asked to ensure that those are Mustangs. I don't know horses that well, but I was asked today if they're actually Mustangs or if they're just horses.
Well, I don't know that I'm an expert at Mustangs, but Mustangs are just wild horses. They're not like cheetahs versus lions. They're just horses that escaped and
Free.
they're not native to North America. They're from, like all the rest of the horses here, descendants of horses brought here primarily by the Spaniards, who brought horses when they were populating the continent. And so Mustangs look like any other horse, except they're wild.
Thank you for that lesson.
It's getting late. So I think that is worthy expenditure of facilities funds, and I don't know how the rest, it doesn't, facility use didn't wear the wall out. It's not going to enhance the functionality of anything, but I like it, and I think it's a worthy expenditure. I don't know about the rest of the committee.
I agree.
Conceptually agree. I'm going to abstain on the actual artwork.
I'm sure there will be more to come.
I'll do that at the board meeting too.
All right, so I have the green light to take this to the board as well.
You do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And so the rest of this is just future agenda topics that we don't need to spend any time with tonight, right?
Yeah, or is there additional that anyone would like to add?
The screen in the gym, although it's not facilities money that's going to fund it, is that something, I apologize, you and I had talked about that already. That's going directly to the board, which is fine.
Yes, that's been donated by the Sports Booster Group. Yes, it's going under donations like we normally do, going straight to the board with donations, but it's of such a grand scale that we're going to ask for a process, and it's an info discussion item. So we're going to talk about it at board and get direction on a process, perhaps for items over 25 grand that are donated.
All right, thank you very much. Unless anybody has anything further, I'm hoping we can adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.